Okay, let's look at the last question, number 14, and it says, based on the evidence from the article, which claim is most accurate? And so we're going to take a look at claims, and more specifically, the standard we're working on is delineate and evaluate the argument and specific claims in a text, assessing whether the reasoning is sound and the evidence is relevant and sufficient. Recognize when irrelevant evidence is introduced. Okay, so let's take a look again. Let's read through our choices and work our way through. Based on evidence from the article, which claim is most accurate? A. Olmsted and Vaux were hired based on their reputations. B. The scale and design of the project made Central Park remarkable for its time. C. Americans had a greater appreciation of nature than did Europeans. And D. Central Park today hosts a greater array of activities than it did in the past. I want to work backwards on this one, if I may. And so D says Central Park today hosts a greater array of activities than it did in the past. While we in previous questions know that people are biking and hiking and reading and watching birds, and we know they're doing a lot of activities today, we don't have evidence on what the activities were when it was first built. So there is no substantial evidence to say that that claim is most accurate. So D is off. C says Americans had a greater appreciation of nature than did Americans. And if you go back to the original first paragraph, it said it was just an idea for more than a decade. But by 1857, New Yorkers were serious about building a grand public park. New York was the largest metropolis in the nation, and its citizens wanted to show the world that Americans were not just concerned about industry, wealth, and materialism, but they also appreciated natural landscapes. From there, the article just goes on about how they chose and then the making of the park. And so that's the only thing that is used. And if you go back to the paragraph, it says that Americans wanted to show the world that they had an appreciation for natural landscapes. So we don't have evidence that substantiates the fact that Americans had a greater appreciation of nature than did Europeans. In fact, Europeans, it was Vaux, that was the British-born architect that was inspired by his British upbringing, that brought his architectural design to this plan. And so, we don't have evidence. We don't have substantial evidence to substantiate C. So C is off. B, the scale and design of the project made Central Park remarkable for its time. And I'm going to go to A. Olmsted and Vaux were hired based on their reputations. We're down to A and B. Let's talk about A for a minute. Reputations are things that follow people. Like reputation for LeBron James is he's an amazing basketball player. He is an amazing person working in the community and providing for students opportunities that they may not otherwise have. And so he has a reputation for being an excellent basketball player. And so reputations are things that just kind of follow people. And so what I want to do now is I want to go back because the question is talking about when they were hired. If we go back and we look at this paragraph that starts with 33, I'm going to read it and let's talk about it for a minute, because this paragraph is the one that talks about how the selection committee based their decision. And it says, Greensward was announced the winner in the spring of 1858. The selection committee debated over certain design points. Some of the members wanted a wide, grand avenue in the park, similar to those found in European parks. Olmsted argued against it by saying that stately roads would destroy scenery at great cost, and that straight lines of trees or stately architecture belong not to parks for the people, but to palatial gardens. Olmsted and Vaux had created their design for the recreation of all people, not just the wealthy. And so from this, it is apparent that the selection committee isn't saying, oh, yeah, let's just hire Olmsted and Vaux because we heard they're great and it's a good plan. They're actually looking specifically at the plan. And so when we go back to A says they were hired based on their reputation, which we can't find evidence for that. When we're looking at the text, they're looking at the specific plan. And so instead of their reputation, they eventually get hired on their specific work. And so A is out because we can't substantiate the statement that it was based on their reputation. So now that we know that A, C, and D are incorrect, we know that B is correct. But let's go back and prove why B is correct. It says the scale and design of the project made Central Park remarkable for its time. Scale and design are talking about size and the specific design. And, when something's remarkable, it's wonderful, it's awesome, it's that aha moment. So if we go back to the article, I'm going to read from 41 through 51, and it says the construction of Central Park was one of the most massive public work projects to take place in the 19th century New York. It required about 20,000 workers to reshape the natural features of the land according to Olmsted and Vaux's plan. 300,000 cubic yards of rock were blasted into rubble, and the resulting stone was crushed to use as paving material. Nearly 3 million cubic yards of soil were moved, and more than 270,000 trees and shrubs were planted. Swamps were transformed into scenic lakes, and extensive drainage work was done to get rid of small streams and pools. By 1866, more than $5 million had been spent on construction. The park's final price tag was more than $10 million. In the end, this entirely planned park, stretching from 59th Street to 110th Street and from 5th to 8th Avenues, had a completely natural, unplanned feeling to it. And so the question asked us, or it states that we need to find evidence where it verifies scale and design. Well, scale is talking about the size and the design itself, and the fact that it was remarkable and aha. Well, scale and design, the scale, it took 20,000 workers to do this. 300,000 cubic yards of rock were blasted, and 3 million cubic yards of soil were moved, and they planted more than 270,000 trees and shrubs. So the scale is enormous. As far as design, it had the what do I want to say? It had the plants, and it had the shrubs, and it had all of those things. And so the design itself was spectacular and then remarkable overall. I mean, when you think of 20,000 workers, when you think of moving 3 million cubic yards, when you think of planting 270,000 trees and shrubs, when you think it's 1866 and the price tag was 10 million. While 10 million today is a lot in the year 2018, think about 1866 and the price tag of 10 million. And one more thing, if you think of the size of it, it goes from 59th Street to 110th Street and from 5th Avenue to 8th Avenue. If you've been in New York, you know that's a huge area. If you haven't been to New York and you went to look at a map, you'll find that it's a huge area. And so from 41 to 51, we absolutely have the best, most accurate evidence to support the claim. And so B, the scale and design of the project made Central Park remarkable for its time, is best substantiated from evidence for this claim. And so for that reason, you should have picked B.